Hi, this is Kirk, the bariatric carnivore. Are you a genetic freak? Are you living up to your genetic potential? And this is a good question to ask yourself. We're getting into the winter time. It's time to start thinking about what do we look like, how do we do this summer, etc. And did we stay off the beach because we were just kind of ashamed? Well, frankly, part of the reason I think a lot of us are ashamed is because we're holding ourselves up to the wrong standard. We look at the influencers on YouTube, we look at supermodels, we look at bodybuilders and stuff like that, and we think that is, if we don't look like that, frankly, we're just not healthy. Well, I hate to tell you this, but a lot of these people are kind of genetic freaks. It's kind of akin to 7-foot tall people. Now, in the last century, somebody discovered that there was only a very small percentage of people that were over 7 feet tall. But over 90% of those people that were over 7 feet tall played in the National Basketball Association. As one coach said, you just can't coach height. And they were basically a very rare genetic anomaly that gave them a particular advantage. And even though they may have not been particularly well skilled, that height advantage was so much that they were able to play in the highest level of professional sports. Most of the people in the National Football League, you're probably never going to play there because you're not over 6'5", and they're just genetic anomalies. They are very different from everybody else. Now, it doesn't mean that they don't work hard. I mean, I know, NFL players, and they work their tails off to get to be able to play at that level. So just having the genetic potential isn't enough. I mean, we've all seen people that were back in high school, they used to eat all the junk food, but, by the time they turned 35, they had a pot belly and they looked horrible. So, just having the genetic potential is not enough. You do have to work at it. And frankly, supermodels and bodybuilders, they do work very hard at not eating and to trying to keep a very low percentage body fat. And they have a lot of self-discipline in order to make that happen. But frankly, that's not my goal. My goal is to try to maximize the genetic potential that I have. And I know that I do not have the right muscles that connect in such a way that is going to make me a bodybuilder. Doesn't mean that I can't get stronger. It doesn't mean that I can't have more muscle. That is something that is within my control. I can have more, and I can be in the upper, 10% of the population in these type of areas. I know that, in order to get to a 10% body fat, I'm gonna would have to do some ridiculous sacrifices. But when I did a DEXA scan earlier this year, and I found out I was at 17% body fat, I felt pretty darn good, because that puts me in that upper 10% for people my age. Apparently very few people my age have body fat percentages that low and have the muscle bone density that I've got, and I feel pretty darn good about being in the upper 10%, and that's good enough for me. So, try to maximize your genetic potential, what you've got. And the cool thing is you can really start at any age. Let me borrow an idea from Dr. Doug McGruff. He's an emergency room physician from South Carolina. He also owns his own gym, and he's a coach for people that want to teach high-intensity training. And brilliant guy and a great communicator. And he talks about health a lot, and he does a great job with it. And one of his ideas that I love is what he calls the area under the curve. And if you have a graph, and at the top you've got the most that you can possibly do, and at the bottom would be the least. And when he says least, he means basically dead. So between the most that you can do, your biggest potential as a human being, and the bottom of that curve, if you look at it, for the average person, we start off in life at one point, where we can do very little. And it keeps increasing. And we hit about our peak about 25 with the absolute most that we can do athletically. This is the strongest that we're going to be the rest of our lives. And then things start to go downhill. The question is, how fast does it go downhill? And for most people, once they peak, it goes downhill pretty darn fast. I know, I was one of those guys. I mean, when I got out of the Army and, quit really worrying about trying to keep my weight at a decent level and stuff like that, my area under the curve started dropping actually rather rapidly, to the point where I was 50 years old and weighed over 300 pounds and was in danger of going blind and diabetic and starting to lose limbs and things like that. Frankly, if I'd kept up that trajectory of that downward slide, there's a real good chance that I was going to end up in some sort of nursing home in my mid-60s because I wouldn't be able to take care of myself. Thankfully, I started discovering carnivore. I got a wake-up call, and I changed the trajectory of the curve. So my curve from the 20s on until 50 was going way downhill. And then at 50, it started going back up. See, you can change that curve. It doesn't have to be a straight line down. You can actually start moving it up, and I think you can start moving it up at any age. One thing I do not listen to, I do not like influencers that are in their 20s telling me how to get healthy and getting the latest and greatest exercises, because frankly, I don't think they know what it's like to be 50 and trying to get stronger. I like guys that were kind of like me. At some point in their 30s or 40s or 50s, they realized that their health was going downhill and they turned it around. And they showed that it's possible. It is possible to change your trajectory of that area under the curve and to get stronger and to turn it around completely. And I did because of their example. And that's why I started this YouTube channel, was to be able to hopefully give some encouragement to other people that are in their 40s and 50s that they can change the trajectory of that area under the curve and make themselves stronger and healthier. And it begins with diet. Frankly, number one thing is you got to get rid of the junk food. About 80% of most people's calories come from ultra-processed food. They are laden with wheats, sugars, industrial seed oils. And as a result, 82% of Americans are metabolically unhealthy, which means they have at least one of the 5 markers for metabolic health. Their waist is too darn big, which means they've got a lot of fat on their internal organs and it is becoming a solid mass. And their bodies are not functioning. Number 2, their blood pressure is too darn high. Number 3, this requires some blood work, but their fasting blood glucose is too high, their HDL is too low, and their triglycerides are through the roof. And if you've got one of those 5 markers, you're in bad shape. You're like 82% of most people. Go look around Walmart or the airport and you'll see what most people look like, and you realize they've got a marker of bad metabolic health. And this is changeable through diet. That's what's cool about it. I mean, when I started off in my 50s, when I began this journey, I had all 5 markers of poor metabolic health, and I turned them all around within the decade. And the last one to go was my high blood pressure. That finally, about a year and a half ago, finally got normal. So it's possible to change all the markers of bad metabolic health, even in your 50s. But it starts with a change in the diet. And then, as you start losing the inflammation, and this is what's really kind of amazing when you start doing this, about 2 weeks after you get rid of the junk food and you start eating a low-carb diet, and that can include vegetables if you like or not. I don't care. If you want to just go pure carnivore, that's fine with me. This isn't a religion. This isn't a cult. There isn't a one-size-fits-all. It's what you like. But if you're sticking to single ingredient foods, with meat being the basis of your food, within 2 weeks, you're going to lose most of the inflammation that has been plaguing you. And you have no clue how much pain you are really in until you're no longer in pain. And the way you get rid of that pain is by getting rid of the inflammation, and that chronic inflammation that is coming from way too many carbs and ultra processed food. And you get rid of that in about 2 weeks. That's, the water weight, quote unquote, that you're losing really fast when you begin a keto diet, low carb diet, carnivore diet. And when people say, well, that doesn't count, that's just water weight. No, it does count, because that's just inflammation. You're just peeing away pure inflammation that has been causing you problems. And you're going to wake up in about 2 weeks and you're going to start to realize, I don't hurt. And that's really cool, because then you're going to start to want to get more active, and you'll start walking more, and you'll start doing things. And then hopefully you'll get to the point where you got like me, where some point about 4 years ago, 3-4 years ago, I started to realize I needed to do more. And I started studying how to get stronger. Because one of the best markers, if you want to increase your area under the curve to be as active as possible, there's a couple things you need: muscle and strength. And the only way to really create muscle and strength is resistance training. So I started adding that in. And frankly, I started settling on bands. And I do them just a couple times a week, and only usually for 10 minutes at a time, because there's another goal. I wanted muscle and strength, but I also didn't want to hurt myself. I've seen too many guys my age that go to the gym and they destroy some muscle or joint, and they are sidelined and they require surgery. And one of my goals is I never want to be on the first name basis with an orthopedic surgeon. So if that's why I use bands, but you can use body weight. You can use weights, I don't care, but do it in such a way that you have enough intensity where you're pushing yourself as close to failure as possible, at least a few times a week. And if you're doing that, using compound movements, and you're just working out really hard for a short period of time, you're going to grow muscle and you're going to get stronger. And you won't hurt yourself. That's the goal. And if you're doing that, you're going to be in a really great position to increase your area under the curve. And if you really want to kick it up a notch, you can do the one thing that I have been adding in this year that I think has been making even more of a difference, and that's adding in sprint training. And you can do sprint training in a couple of different ways. I prefer to use equipment like a Schwinn Air 9 bike or something like that. You can use a rowing machine, or you can literally sprint. Find a piece of grass somewhere that you can run on. And the idea is to just go as hard as you possibly can for about 10 or so seconds, 10 to 15 seconds, and then take a breather for 2 minutes. And then do it again. And you do that about 5 times, just all out. It's amazing how good of a workout you're going to get in such a short period of time. And if you just do that a couple times a week, you are going to improve your body's metabolic health in spectacular ways. I don't recommend you start off doing sprint training. Get the diet first. Get rid of the inflammation first. Build up your strength. And then start to throw in the sprint training. And what's going to happen is, faster than you might think, really within a couple of months, you're going to find yourself feeling better and stronger. The scale may or may not move very much, but you're going to notice that your clothes are going to be fitting much better, and you're going to be losing weight, and you're going to be putting on more muscle mass. I'm not going to guarantee you that you're going to look like a fitness model in a couple of months. That is not the goal of this thing. This is a long-term process. But boy, when you start adding in a little bit of extra training with a good diet, within a couple of years, you are going to be feeling better than you felt in a long time. And then you get to do something really fun. It's almost state fair time here in Oklahoma, and I get to do something that I love doing every single year. It's kind of my new thing. I like to go to the Marine Corps booth, and they always have a pull-up bar. And I always say, hey, can I borrow your bar for a minute? And it is a lot of fun to watch the jaws drop on a bunch of 20-somethings when a 60-year-old dude can do 10 to 15 pull-ups without even breaking a sweat. And they always ask me the same question every year. What do you do? And I tell them the same thing. I eat meat. And that's really, that to me is kind of fun. And I like to do that once a year just to see that I'm still getting stronger, still getting healthier. And I hope you're going to do the same thing. If you like this message, if you got some encouragement out of it, realize that you can begin at any age. I started this in my 50s. There are people I know that have started doing this in their 60s and 70s even. It's never too late to extend your area under the curve, to change your trajectory, to make yourself stronger, healthier, and able to do more stuff. Because that's your birthright, frankly. I'm tired of looking at people just falling apart because nobody's told them. And frankly, you've been told. You got a plan. It's pretty simple. Get rid of the junk food, eat meat. In a couple of weeks, start putting in some resistance training. You start doing that, it doesn't cost much money, and it's only going to improve your area under the curve. This is Kirk, the Bariatric Carnivore. If you like this message, please hit the like and subscribe button. Join us in this journey for better health. Leave a comment down below if you have experienced this, if you understand, if you've gone through this journey and you've made yourself healthier. Give some encouragement to other people. Let them know that it can be done at any age, because it certainly can. I try to put out a new message a couple of times a week. I will talk to you soon.